Kaffe, you were born in California and went to the Boston Museum School of Fine Arts. What made you decide to cross over the pond and come to the UK?
Well, what made me decide to come to England was meeting Christopher Isherwood was the sort of nail in the coffin of that decision. I met him in San Francisco, and he was about 60 years old then. I thought he was ancient because I was like 27. But I thought, he was the most entertaining and amusing person that I had met, and also had an extraordinary insight, I felt, into human life. And when I heard he was an author, I rushed out and got all of his books the next day and just read everything. And a lot of it was about England.
Right.
And so I thought, I'd like to go and meet the society that produced that extraordinary mind. So off I went.
Okay. I mean, you were a painter first. How did you get interested in sort of knitwear and textiles?
The interest in textiles came from, I was painting, and I was, gathering still life material and filling up my kind of, cupboards and things like that with things that I could make. And I was looking all the time at pattern and color on my still life objects, because mainly I was a still life painter, painting pots and teapots and cups and things like that. And I was very interested in the cloth that I was laying my still lifes on. I was getting these wonderful Indian print tablecloths or things like that from flea markets, and using those. And just that pattern was very interesting to me, but it never occurred to me to actually make one. And then I went by accident to Scotland with a wonderful producer of fashion, Bill Gibb, this incredible designer, and he was buying ancient tartans, and in the same mill we had these beautiful knitting yarns. And I thought, God, I could take the beautiful colors that are in those tartans and I could actually make them into a piece of knitting that I could control myself and produce. And so I grabbed 20 colors, thinking I would get somebody to knit me a sweater. And on the train back to London, I just cornered a woman sitting on the train, and I said, "Do you know how to knit?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "I've got a sweater I've got to make, because I can't imagine how I would design it for somebody else to make. So I've got to do it myself." And she taught me. It took me 20 minutes to learn, and I was completely hooked by the time I got to London.
So you actually learned how to knit on the train?
Yeah, absolutely. That was my tuition.
What was your first big commission?
I suppose I would say that the first incredible attention that came to me in a commercial way was working for the Massonis. I designed a piece for Vogue Knitting, and the minute that went into their magazine, it was a very, very complicated little waistcoat that had lots and lots of ancient patterns and very soft, heathery colors. And the minute that went into the magazine, I got a call from the Massoni family saying they wanted to have me come and design in Italy. And so that was, I suppose, the first really big attention.
Okay. Over the years, you've travelled to many countries. That must have left you with a lasting impression. Which countries have actually influenced you most?
Well, I would say the countries that influenced me most, because I'm an obsessive about color, are the countries that are free and easy with color, that have no complexes or restraint about color. So countries like Guatemala, Africa, India, Mexico, they're just places that totally celebrate color. And that, I mean, not the sophisticates of the country or the intelligentsia. I'm talking about the poorest people in those countries will cultivate wonderful collections of clothes or furnishings for their houses that are intensely colorful, and that's different from almost anywhere else in the world. You know, it's quite amazing.
Yeah. Looking at some of the vast range of floral fabrics you have designed, they are produced in a multitude of colourways, which sometimes turn your designs into a feast of abstract colour. How long does it take to work out all these different colour combinations that you might use?
Well, it takes me about 2 days to develop a design for a floral design to print onto fabric. And then it takes probably another day of intensive work to do the colorways. I'm sitting down looking at that original design and thinking, now I would like one, you know, it might be all pinks and reds the way I first painted it. And then I would decide I'm going to have it in very intense blues, or a very green kind of story, or brown, or whatever. And so all of that kind of thought process goes quite quickly once the actual design is made.
So many of your designs represent fruit and vegetables and flowers. Did you have any training, any botanical training in painting, and do you have an interest in growing anything yourself?
I sort of feel like that old Chinese philosopher who says, or the emperor or something, when he says, when I retire, when I'm getting close to dying, I'm going to become a gardener. I think it could be like that, you know, that I could have myself a little tiny cottage and a huge garden at the end of my life. I don't grow anything now. I have a wonderful gardener that comes and sees to that. I love gardens and plants, and I love botanical illustration as well. It's very interesting to me, particularly if it's done by slightly primitive hands. You know, there's a sort of, I love a naive approach to that kind of a science of really studying a plant and getting it all down. But I haven't actually done it myself.
Do you prefer doing work which derives more from nature, or those that appear more abstract in their design?
It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm doing a needlepoint design, then I can do very natural things. You know, all of the nuances of a flower, reflected color and intense shading on the petals, and it can be extremely detailed, and I can get all of that intensity. When it comes to knitting, if you have too many colors going on across a row, I mean, I can cope with a lot of colors across a row, but not enough to create a really botanically perfect specimen. So yeah, I tend to go very geometric when I'm knitting, and then if I'm doing prints, again, I can get quite detailed. So I'll get quite detailed in my printed fabrics.
Is colour the most important thing to you when you start working on a design?
Yes, I would say that color is first and foremost one of my intense and ambitions in any project. If it isn't good color-wise, forget it. I'm not interested in a beautiful form that is bloody boring color-wise. You know, beige and black or something. It doesn't interest me, which it does a lot of the world. I mean, I would think most of the design I look at is kind of beige and gray and black, and they're just thinking form is the utmost of interest. To me, it's always about color.
You use analogous and complementary contrasting in colours to great effect. Which do you enjoy doing most?
I have absolutely no idea what that really means.
I mean, in terms of harmony, I mean, yeah. or really socket between the eyes, sort of.
Well, I like to sock people between the eyes, but I always want harmony.
Yeah.
I always want a beautiful end product, and some people don't understand that about me. They think I'm just a kind of gypsy that likes any old thing. I love a gypsy approach to life. And to color, but if the end result is not exquisitely satisfying, if it doesn't it should move you, but it should also not be discordant, I feel.
Do you see your work as something of a mission? I mean, in terms of encouraging people to actually do creative things like knitting and sewing and so on.
It sounds awful, but I'm afraid I am a bit of a missionary. I know that people can cope with color much more than they think they can. And so I want to encourage them to have more confidence in their use of color, because it is, to me, one of the most magic things in the world that you can do for yourself, is to make a good color combination.
So what would be your advice to someone trying to find their own way through this colour spectrum in their own soft furnishings? To go cautiously, or to, anything goes?
Well, I think most people have the experience of going cautiously. If you just look at the fashion world these days, you can see, how utterly restrained it is. There's no color to be seen. I mean, I've just been looking in shops down the West End, very interesting, how little color there is and things. I think if you're going to decide on a color scheme for a room, let's say, I think you should have a period of going a bit wild, getting a bit drunk on the possibilities, and then you can always narrow it down. But aim high.
Yeah.
Go for lots of color, but make it beautiful, make it harmonious.
Okay. This year, Kaffe, at Hampton Court, they're at the flower show. They are naming a rose after you.
Right.
Are you going to be in attendance at Hampton Court this year?
I think I am. Yes, I think that there is a ceremony. So I'm not ever sure what the hell I'm doing down the line in the next couple of weeks or something or whatever. But I know that it has been talked about, and that there is going to be a presentation of the actual rose. I am absolutely dying to see it in the flesh. I've only seen a photograph of it.
What colour is it?
It's the most beautiful pink, wonderful sort of magenta pink. I mean, I say magenta. It's not deep. It's deep for pink. Mm-hmm. Wonderful, wonderful, fresh kind of pink from the photograph that I've seen.
And finally, Kaffe, we always end up with asking our last question, which is, what's your favourite cake?
My favorite cake? Well, what an interesting question. I wasn't prepared for that. Let's see, my favorite cake. I think when I was a kid, we had a wonderful shop called Blooms, which served Blums. Blums, in Carmel, and it served the most marvelous kind of cakes. And I can remember one that was kind of meringue, but it had a wonderful burnt sugar kind of caramel taste to it. Oh my goodness, that was supremely beautiful. That's like a childhood memory.
Okay.
Yeah.
Kaffe, thank you very much indeed.
Okay.